Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the newest episode of the Primllife podcast. When it comes to learning more about our bodies and our minds, I've been really exploring that, and so I decided to bring on the Dairy Queen herself, Victoria, on today. I stumbled across her page when I was looking through some of the people that I've had on the podcasts, and they posted a lot of similar content, and I saw some of her stuff on there, some of her stories, and I just really wanted to learn more. So, Victoria, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Colin. Thank you so much for having me on here.
No, of course. It's one of the things where it's like, if I can bring someone on to make other people's lives better, I would be doing myself a disservice for not choosing that option, and everyone else who could possibly benefit from hearing about it. And it's kind of funny because I saw a raw goat milk stand the other day when I was driving to work, and I've been meaning to stop there. Every single time something's popped up to where I'm running late for work, but raw milk is something that I want to explore more. And when it comes to our gut health and there's our overall wellness, there are so many benefits behind it. And just to have you come on today to talk more about it, it's going to be a blessing. So yeah, now how did you get into this whole industry?
So, I actually work for a health startup, which we've been working on for about almost 2, 3 years now. And it's just always been a part of the, I guess, learning journey for just learning about overall health. There was no veganism. That wasn't a part of the startup, but it started for me with veganism. But once I started working for the startup, then we all jumped into paleo and keto and really agree with anymore. But about a year into our studies regarding health, I stumbled upon the Weston Price Foundation because we were really interested in traditional eating. That was the turning point for, when I stopped being keto, paleo, among other things. I also got really, really sick actually during keto. So raw milk, I mean, I was just looking for answers, and you spend hours and hours and hours on the internet. Something is bound to come up, especially when you're using certain keywords. So it started with just looking for traditional ways of eating. And then I heard raw milk, and I was like, what the heck is this? Like, there's, it's like, what is so special about raw milk? And it's not that I thought initially, oh, that sounds dangerous. Like some people, they because I know that there's tons of propaganda against raw milk, which is ridiculous. But yeah, I just found the Weston Price Foundation because they were all about traditional eating. And there's a section on their website that talks about raw milk. And they have this whole tool that you can put in your address or your county, and you find raw milk around you. It's called realmilk.com.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I just started reading their blogs, and I was like, this is amazing. People were coming in with stuff like asthma, allergies, gut problems, ADD, autoimmune diseases, diabetes, literally all these major diseases. These people experienced it and were healed through raw milk. And I was like, how does that even work?
Yeah.
What is so special about raw milk for that to even happen? Okay, so the next thing that I found after I dove into this, because I was like, well, I want to heal. I was going through my own thing, which to this day I have never been properly diagnosed because the healthcare system sucks. It really does.
Yes.
And with the pandemic the past 2 years, um it's been so hard to see a doctor with crappy insurance. So I just kind of don't have time to wait 3 months to see a specialist, or to be put on a waiting list into oblivion. I just don't. So I had to obviously find the information myself. But I came across this article that I think this was the real turning point, because it was a very personal article to me. I don't know why. I think it was because the guy in it, he was in an accident, and the doctors put him on a bunch of antibiotics and steroids, and basically he went home, and the next month he fell into a very deep ditch in for his health.
Yeah.
And he got really, really sick. he recovered from the illness somewhat, right? Or not the illness, sorry, the accident somewhat, but he got worse in other areas of his life. So the antibiotics and steroids completely wrecked his gut lining, and he couldn't eat anything without throwing up, just getting really, really sick and weak. So he was starting to get really skinny. I think this dude was an athlete. He's starting to get really skinny, lost all his muscle. I mean, he could barely walk. And then I think his family found raw milk, and it was the only thing that they could, you know, make him eat. So he just dove right in, and he found a local farmer, and he started drinking like a gallon a day, which is a lot. But if you're not eating anything else, that's honestly, that's not that bad, because a gallon I think is 2,500 calories
Oh yeah.
if you don't skim the fat. So you know, it's understandable why he was able to sustain himself on that. But I think it took him like 6 months to recover. Of course, I think it was 3 months of drinking the raw milk every day, a gallon, and then 6 months of like total recovery, where I think he was implementing other foods as well. And that story, the reason why it resonated with me is because, and this is something that I've been kind of exploring lately, because the more I learn about health and the healthcare system, the more I'm able to like decode what is what's bad and what's really bad,
Yeah.
you know, in that system. And so three, I think 3 years ago now, I ended up in the ER, because my legs were shaking. I was like losing consciousness out of nowhere. I was experiencing hot flashes, and it was just a really, really bad time. And we had no idea like where this was coming from. Like I said before, I was doing keto. And before that, so I was on month 3 of keto. And right before that, I did paleo for a week. And before that, I was vegan for 2 years. So I thought, oh, you know, I'll do paleo for a week to introduce myself back to animal products. And then I'll do keto. I'll just jump into it, you know, because I wanted to lose weight. Of course, that's always been the stupid mindset of like, of my entire life. I went vegan so I can lose weight,
Mm-hmm.
did keto to lose weight. You know, it's always at the back of every woman's mind, because that's kind of how we've been programmed our entire lives, which is a topic for later. But um, so yeah, it was like, it was really bad when I
Yeah.
got sick. And that first night in the ER, I they basically they couldn't tell me what was going on. When I told them that I think I'm having an aneurysm, because that's honestly what it felt like. I was getting brain chills. There was this really sharp pain in my brain, on my forehead. I was like, this feels like an aneurysm, like by definition. You know, I was obviously Googling the symptoms, but they laughed in my face when I showed up there, and they took me in, and they did a CT scan, because they're like, we don't know what's wrong with you, so we're going to do a CT scan. I was like, okay. I was with my friend, and he was like, I don't know if I would do that if I were you. And I was like, I know, but I'm really scared. Like, what if I have a tumor? You know, like I wanted to know. But while we were waiting for the doctors, like we were both on our phones researching how bad CT scans are, and all of these, you know, quote unquote normal treatments that a lot of these hospitals do. But the CT scan itself, I don't know how true this is, but there's a lot of correlation between doing a CT scan, and then developing some kind of cancer later on.
Mm.
Or it's basically just free radical damage, which is what cancer is. So,
Yeah.
you know, you can put two and two together, but either way, I didn't want free radical damage, but I was like, I need to know what's going on. So I went in, and I had this really bad feeling the entire second guessing. Only that, it was a CT scan with contrast. So they inject into your arm this substance that lights up, I
Yeah.
think, all your nerves. And when they were like, all right, we're going to inject this, you might taste metal in your mouth. But that'll be fine. It only lasts like 10 seconds. And I was like, okay. And they injected it into my mouth, and I was like, I felt like I was sucking on like a bag of pennies. It was so bad. And nothing came up, thank God. But from my recent research, and just having the best followers on Instagram ever who are like extremely supportive throughout this entire journey. People would come to me and just tell me about their own experiences. And someone mentioned contrast and how it's full of heavy metals.
Mhm.
And everything clicked for me. Everything clicked. Because all the symptoms I've been going through the past 3 years is like literally symptoms of heavy metal poisoning.
That's crazy.
Because I know, right? It's like, and this is like a standard procedure. So not only are we like extremely exposed to heavy metals like in our day-to-day lives, like I know like even our silverware has like trace heavy metals in it, because most silverware is made of tin, not actual silver. Fun
Hmm.
fact. So yeah, we're already bombarded. Even in the rain, there's heavy metals and acids. And if
Wow.
you have you ever heard of acid rain, actually?
I have actually, yeah. I know it's getting worse over the past 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't mean to digress, but it's really bad, and it's I think it's from like just standard farming, conventional farming practices. So like the glyphosate that they spray on everything, but it's really bad.
Yeah.
So I've never been able to figure out what was wrong with me. And I may never know exactly what was wrong with me, but all I know is like, what was my environment? What was I eating the years leading up to it? And all of that crazy stuff. So after, and I'm trying to keep this story short, but it's a very long story. I'm gonna try to kind of like move along, but basically I do believe that if I didn't get the contrast I would have been fine. But a month later I ended up in the ER again, and this time my legs were, it literally looked like I was having a seizure, but just in my
Oh my
legs.
gosh.
And I was also losing consciousness again and all this stuff. And it was like, why would that happen exactly a month later? Like it made no sense at all. And this time, like I didn't really have like that like brain chill head pain thing. So that's why I know it wasn't really the same thing as the first rodeo.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, there's something else going on here. But again, that night I was taken to the ER. I actually never got seen. Their waiting room was like full of people. I just went home after 4 hours. I was like, screw this. Like, we know enough to mitigate these symptoms for now. And like, we're just going to have to find a
Yeah.
solution eventually. But very horrible time. But anyways, with raw milk, um, that guy's story with, he got into an accident and raw milk saved his life. It was kind of the same thing for me. There was a lot of other factors as well, but I immediately found a raw milk supplier. It was this farm in Georgia, um, a family farm actually. It was so beautiful the way they lived. I mean, they were just good Christian people. They had like a small plot of land with like 10 cows, and their milk was ridiculously expensive. It was like $9 a half gallon. So
Wow.
$18 for a full gallon of milk, raw milk. So but I was so convinced. I was like, I'm just gonna do it. Screw it. I don't
Yeah.
want to live like this anymore. That was my medicine. I didn't take any of the medicine that they prescribed to me. This crazy like anti-migraine medicine. I was like, this isn't a migraine. Sorry, I was gonna say dumbasses. There it is. But like that's just what was my mindset the entire time. I was like, you guys are so stupid.
Yeah.
Like I just couldn't believe like the stuff that they were prescribing to me. I was like, do you not even listen? Like I'm not having a migraine. I'm not as sensitive to light either way. So that was my medicine. I was like, all right, so $18 every 2 weeks, because I would drink a gallon every 2 weeks to start. I would drink more, but money was tight. And it was a very gradual improvement.
Yeah.
But I noticed that as soon as I started drinking it, my body kind of like just relaxed, like fully relaxed. And this is so crazy. Especially like, and I talk about this a lot on my page. I actually made a meme about this because it just described how I felt when I add like raw honey to the milk. There's either two things that happen. You either become really calm, your anxiety goes down, you're just able to chill out, Or, and I think this it depends on the time of day, it turns into like a healthy like Red Bull version of a
Oh,
drink.
that's
So
awesome.
I don't know what like deciphers what happens to you, but like a few nights ago I drank about like a cup of raw milk and raw honey, and I was literally bouncing off the walls, and it was like 8 o'clock at night. So but when I first started drinking it, I was already so chronically stressed where it was just like when I drank it, it was like my body telling myself, you can be safe now, you're safe now, you know.
Yeah.
That's how it felt. And ever since then, I have not stopped. I haven't had a week without raw milk, except maybe during traveling, but it has done some amazing things. Like, I know that at the time I had some kind of IBS, which was never, but you know, my primary care physician would always this
Yeah.
take this, take this drug, it'll help you. um but yeah, so I would always, like, every time I ate, my stomach would hurt, you know, I had really bad digestion. It was just, you know, and then if you have really bad digestion, you're not absorbing any of the minerals. So I was just becoming really, really mineral and vitamin deficient. But the raw milk, because of being vegan for 2 years, it will wreck your gut. In fact, like if you were to take a microscopic view of your gut, you would see a vegan's gut have like tears in it, like really like small
Wow.
micro tears. That's kind of like what happens when you finish being vegan.
That's
So
crazy.
I was not surprised that I developed some. I know, right? It is insane, these diets out here. But yeah, the milk basically acted like a glue. Like, it healed my IBS really, really fast. I was like, I think it was like a month or two later where I was drinking a cup a day, and I was like, hey, I it doesn't hurt when I eat anymore. Like, my digestion is fine. You know, like I would leave the bath and I'd be like, this is amazing. um, and so yeah, it like literally acted like a glue for my gut. And yeah, it's just like, I know you said a lot of your listeners have like Crohn's or all sorts of things, right?
Hmm.
So, I mean, a lot of people, they won't get into raw milk because, um, or milk in general, because they think like, oh, I'm lactose intolerant, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's not the case at all.
That's okay. So
It's really
there's
not.
a million things to break down there. I just got more and more excited as you talked about these things.
Oh,
Um,
for sure. I'll let you talk now.
no, no, no. This is awesome. So your story, the whole IBS. I actually, so I don't know what this was. It was probably some like irritable bowel syndrome. But you talked about the guy losing a ton of weight because his gut lining was just falling apart. A few years back, I was eating a ton of brown rice and stuff that was considered probably pretty healthy. But I was noticing that I would immediately, like the second I'd start eating, my body would like immediately flush everything, and I just get immediately sick to my stomach. I would probably be using the restroom maybe 15 times a day because the second I'd eat food, my stomach would just be like, hell no, we're not doing this. And it got to the point where I was eating like 7,000 calories a day, but I was losing like 7 pounds a week straight. I was shitting blood. I was constantly sick to my stomach. I was becoming
Wow.
more and more and more like allergic to other foods. Like I couldn't have any vegetables anymore, any fruit anymore, any meat, like any dairy products would be like an instant hell no. Potatoes, like all these things that were healthy, I was becoming allergic to. My body would just react terribly to it. It got to the point where like the only thing I could eat was like chicken and some like I don't know. There was some like I think the chicken and bananas were like okay, and like occasionally
Wow.
peanut butter. But I was just getting more and more sick. When it comes to the raw milk, I personally am lactose intolerant. Would I how is it different from like the normal like FDA okay milk?
So, I mean, the only reason that people think they're lactose intolerant is because pasteurized milk doesn't have this enzyme called lactase, and raw milk does. So a lot of people that are
Really?
lactose intolerant, they'll drink, yeah, people that are lactose intolerant will drink raw milk, and very slowly, of course. You want to start with like a fourth cup a day and then like work your way up. They won't feel anything because the lactase is there. So, and that helps digest the milk and like helps your body absorb it. So, yeah, it's the specifics are definitely like skewed. here. So
Yeah, that's so cool though. And it was one of the things where I was like, how can I figure out a way to work this in my diet? But the fact that like I can't actually eat this is pretty awesome.
yeah.
When it does come to like how when you said a fourth of a cup a day to start it out, how fast should they build up after that?
I mean, I can only say what I did, and then like what my local farmer friend told me. She was like, "Yeah, start with a fourth cup a day for about a week, and then go up to like a half cup, and then 3/4 cup. So like by week, because she said if you drink too much initially, you might get diarrhea, but some people speculate that that's actually not the worst thing because diarrhea sometimes can be, not sometimes, but actually a lot of the time, is just your body flushing out bad bacteria, bad
Hmm.
toxins. So that milk could actually be like binding to some of those toxins and then like just flushing it out. So if you want to speed up the process and you're okay with being in a little bit of pain, like, I mean, you could probably do that because going into raw milk, like I would have never done that because I didn't know what I know now. But like having that reaction is not something I'm really scared of anymore because of just how many things I've tried. And it's like, I just know my body.
Just make sure to have a
But
bathroom on
yeah,
hand.
exactly. Exactly.
Oh, that's so cool. So, and I remember you also talked about your other issues with like the potential seizures and like the brain aneurysms. That stuff is terrifying. Like I don't know how I would react to that at all. Like the
Yeah.
fact that it was completely unknown, and then you're adding in all these other variables like the heavy metals and stuff like that too. It's crazy how, and this kind of goes off in hand like how the FDA has like banned raw milk, even though it kills like 0.25 people a year because like how like
Yeah.
actually not bad it is for us. Which I just
Well,
think is
actually, sorry to interrupt you, but that point two is usually like raw milk from like really filthy dairy
so
farms.
other
Like,
variables like introduced to it.
yes, yes.
Oh,
I
but
just thought I would let you know.
I quite honestly that was a thought when I was playing this podcast out. Like I guessing this isn't even like a truly correct number, but like looking at like what the healthcare system considers healthy, and what they consider not unhealthy. It's everything that they don't fully understand, and a lot of times it's good for us that is like kind of like immediately banned, and then it's the what is allowed like for our bodies is almost I look at the numbers and what is okay to consume. They set this number at like what the acceptable like damage is that is okay for like our bodies. And I feel like that's such a terrible mindset. Like how many heavy metals can we consume before like we notice like before like the risk of cancer becomes too crazy? How much radiation can someone take in before the risk of cancer goes up too far? How much calories or how obese can we get before the problems
Yeah.
become too prevalent? And it's all about, and then when it comes to it, it's when they do hit that point where like the problems start creeping in, it's never about healing. It's always about allowing you to continue the lifestyle and just keep the symptoms at bay. Yeah,
Mitigation
mitigation.
is a good word.
That is
Yeah.
incredible.
And it's, yeah, I was just going to say, I love that you brought that up, actually about, like how much can we take. There's this thing called a toxic load. So if you can imagine, like every single person is born with like a bucket,
Mhm.
and all the toxins around them, all the bad things that they are exposed to, fills up the bucket a little bit. And over their lifetimes, usually when someone's bucket overflows, you can imagine that as they've just been hit with some kind of like really bad disease,
Yeah.
right? So like cancer, diabetes, or just honestly like me 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I was at my very like I was at my toxic load. My bucket was overflowing, especially when I got that CT scan. So, I was, like I said, I was vegan for 2 years, and during that time, I ate tons of nuts, tons. And I don't know if you're familiar with PUFAs, but nuts are filled with PUFAs. And so I was just basically oxidizing my entire body for 2 years.
Mm.
And then just depleting myself of minerals. And just by the end of it, I looked like a completely different person. And I have a crazy before and after.
I was gonna
That
say like that the photos that you've posted on Instagram of what you looked like 2 years ago, probably for most people would have been considered okay. But like the photos now, like the before and after is insane. Like if someone could be told like you could go from looking like this, like what most people would say like is a very pretty girl, to like where you are now, I think like everyone would be jumping on the bandwagon and like immediately trying to like heal up all their problems.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's like I always say, if you want to if you want to like, obviously, I think for every girl, the goal is to be a 10, right? That's kind of what fuels the plastic surgery market and
Yeah.
all of that. But if you could do that naturally, and obviously, I'm not gonna lie, of course, that's my goal as well. It's not the goal. I care about other things. I care about my soul and I care about my brain and being smart. But of course, it's part of it. Like I want to be as beautiful as I can be,
Yeah.
and we only have one life. Like I want to excel at literally everything. So as soon as I saw that every like 3 months, there was like an extreme increment of like additional beauty, I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like I always tell people, like I joke, I'm like, if you want to be beautiful, drink raw milk, or if you like just eat animal products like in excess, like eat it like your life depends on it, because it does. But
Literally.
it's so true.
Yeah, when it does come to the other areas of your health, what other steps have you taken to like improve your physical and mental health as if you've gone upon this journey?
So I definitely have tried to eat more meat in general, more beef, because it's
Yes.
just so high in vitamin A. And a lot of the issues that I was experiencing, like just this is like kind of the foundation of a lot of diseases, is like there's an extreme deficiency in vitamin A. A lot of skin issues are just
Yep.
vitamin A deficiencies, even like being overweight. It's just there's so many factors. I'm not going to say it's just a vitamin A deficiency.
But it certainly
It's
helps.
an everything deficiency, but yeah, exactly. And I just knew like the 2 years after I was recovering from veganism and keto and paleo, I was eating a good amount of meat, but I was like, I definitely need more, because if you're trying to heal and you're still not you're still not hitting your protein, like there's just so much that you're missing out on. So I just tried, even though and this is a crazy phenomenon, but a lot of ex-vegans, we have a really hard time eating meat, like enjoying it, and kind of like sometimes I'll be eating it and I'll like kind of like not gag, but I'll just be really turned off by it, and I'm like, okay, and the rest of the steak I have to like force myself, and it's just this really weird thing that I can't fully explain to you why that happens. I don't know if it's psychological. I don't know if it's a physical thing.
Some like
But yeah,
Pavlovian like experiment where like your brain like immediately like attributes meat to like being a bad person, and then like it manifests itself in like these like physical like disgust, and that like pops up from time to time.
perhaps it could be. I think for me, it's less physio, or I think it's less psychological, because I have thrown out that vegan mindset. I threw it so far. I mean, I had to like kind of put myself in like not actual therapy. I never went to therapy, but like I put myself in a therapy like where I was trying to heal myself and like
Yeah.
my traumas. So I did tons of journaling, and just I surrounded myself with other people that are like really big into this way of eating that I currently do, and just hearing the science about all of it and all the little details just really helped me kind of conquer that old mindset. So I think it might be physical for me. I think it's like,
Wow.
there's certain foods that like some people will smell and they don't like the smell, and it's like, okay, like oysters, for example. Some people, I think the phenomenon is this: if you don't like the smell, if you don't like the taste, it just means that you need it even more. So like,
Really?
yeah, so I've heard that so many times. It's like if someone doesn't like oysters, it means that like they're zinc deficient. And don't quote me on this, do your own research, but
Yeah.
it's just what I've heard, and I think it's very interesting. So every time I'm like, this tastes horrible, I'm just like, well, you got to eat it more. You'll get over it. So, but yeah, so red meat, I added in a lot more. I try to eat at least like one steak a day. Ideally, I would like to eat more, but I physically cannot. So, I'll try to do like, for my protein sources, I'll do like eggs in the morning. steak for lunch, and then like lately I've been doing like pasture raised sausage for dinner,
That sounds
and then like
delicious.
with bone broth on the side. I know
Like who wouldn't want to eat like that? Like I could do that every
I
day.
know it's so easy, and then people think like, oh, I have to go become healthy and I have to go on a diet, and then they eat food that they hate, and it's like, yeah, no wonder you relapse in like a month, Stephanie.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so easy. And like I eat a lot of ice cream. I'm not gonna lie. I think that's like a really big part of my entire diet. It's like I'll eat ice cream before bed, and it helps me sleep because it brings my anxiety down. The sugar in it, it just really calms me down, and it kind of just adds to. So sugar has like a really therapeutic effect, and I don't mean like cane sugar, white sugar. That's another topic, and I'm not anti-sugar. I actually eat cane sugar here and there,
Oh
but
yeah.
just like the sugar in milk, in the honey, and all of that, it signals to your body that you're safe, basically. And that's why it's so great to eat before bed. But just some like pasture raised like ice cream, like grass-fed milk and pastured egg yolks, and just really good ingredients, and like some fruit. What is bad about that?
Exactly. Yeah.
People try to limit their ice cream, they'll count their calories, and it's like, what are you doing? Like I personally don't count my calories. I kind of just listen to my body, but it's diet culture has really messed us up. And
It really has.
I still sometimes kind of like suffer from the mindset, but it's getting better.
It's crazy when you do like consume like animal products, stuff that the earth has given us, how quickly things fall in place regarding like fitness, muscle growth, fat loss. Like I just find my body gets so optimized to the point where like counting calories gets thrown out the window. Like I don't need to be in a state of constantly doing that because I
Yeah.
have the perfect amount of energy. My sleep is incredible. My workouts are like getting better and better by the day. And the second I start, even if I am counting calories, the second I start like going out to eat more often or like having more and more like unhealthy food, not just like sugar, but like actually like a lot of vegetable oils or all these other unhealthy things that our bodies weren't meant to have. That's when everything falls out of place. And it's crazy how quickly the switch happens. But once I do realize this and get back on track, like how things get optimized to the point where they should, very very quick.
Yeah, and it's like losing weight actually isn't hard. Like
Yeah,
I have lost the most weight just by eating and like walking every day.
literally.
I for a while I wasn't even working out because I was experimenting with certain training systems, and I stopped lifting so that I kind of don't stunt my growth with the training systems. Um, and I realized I was still getting skinnier. Like I was still losing fat. It was literally burning off of me, like
Hmm.
like no tomorrow. And it was just beautiful. Another food though, like this is something that I incorporated a few months ago, because before, I would say maybe like 6 months ago, but a few months ago I started eating liver multiple times a week.
Yes, yes.
And that was like, I don't even know what to compare that to.
I've heard
It
it. It's like a
was,
superfood, but it's like not even just that. Like every single like person like the manosphere that has like talked about optimizing testosterone, optimizing their health, energy levels, fat loss. Liver has always been the key for every single one of them.
yeah, for good reason, right?
Yeah.
It's been amazing. Like every time I eat liver, about 30 minutes to an hour later. And this is the same for like me and all my friends. It's because I usually get them into eating liver. I'm like, oh, try this with me. And it'll be straight up raw liver that, I chop up very finely, take a small like scoop of it, put it into my mouth raw, and then I chase it with milk without ever tasting the liver. And that works for me. I mean, it depends on like how strong your stomach acid is. Like sometimes I notice that so another thing I deal with is like hypothyroidism. So it's
Mm.
not, again, not diagnosed, but through taking my temperature every morning, I know that I have low thyroid function. So um, that also can look like low stomach acid. And on days where I have very like heavy low thyroid symptoms, like I'll also notice that I can't digest like meat as well.
Yep.
So I have to be very careful, and other people have to be very careful as well. But if you're good on all of that, or if you like take the steps to like build your stomach acid up and improve your digestion, where you're going to the bathroom like 2-3 times a day, if you know what I mean. And like if you have that down, like, go for it. It's amazing. But like I was saying, when I get me and my friends to do it, some of them some of them would say like, yeah, I feel high after eating liver.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm like, I felt that a few times. I don't know if it's because I eat it so often. It's just like, okay, maybe I feel high all the time then, in a good way, like high on life,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, that kind of high. Not like, like kind of sleepy and chill and slow. No, it's not like that. But yeah, and it's probably because like your body just receives all these like minerals and vitamins all at once. And it's just like, thank you.
And
Like,
it
I'm
kind of
gonna give
didn't
you.
realize before like how well off it could be, and now like your baseline is like your old baseline has been just been like elevated to like where it should actually be, and you're now getting like
Right.
reaping all the benefits and the positive symptoms of like actually being healthy.
Yeah, I love that. So liver and is an amazing addition. And I usually tell people like, why are you wasting your time cooking that? Like it tastes so bad cooked. I mean, if you like it, if you cook it with a bunch of onions, and if you like kind of soak the liver in some milk beforehand, like it helps with the smell and taste. But
Yeah.
I cannot do it. I can't. I just eat it raw and I chase it with milk and a bunch of honey, raw honey.
Oh.
And it's just so fast. It's like chop it up in between, breakfast and lunch. So maybe like 2 hours after breakfast, I'll just eat some raw liver and I'm good to go. So um trying to think. So yeah, I keep talking about raw honey. Raw honey is literally essential. Like if you want to like have tons of energy throughout the day and you don't drink coffee or you want to quit coffee, then just run to the raw honey. Like put it in your milk, put it in your filtered water with some salt or
Yeah.
whatever kind of minerals you want to put it in. But like it's the best way to stay calm and collected all day, because the reason most people get anxiety is because their body is like running out of fuel, and it's like, okay, what do we do, like, so then like your body has to get the fuel from somewhere. It'll take it from your muscles, or like take it away from some of your brain, and then you'll get like headaches and it. So yeah, raw honey,
Yeah.
like if you want endless energy, just eat tablespoons and tablespoons of raw honey. And on the topic of that, just one more thing, like you really have to be careful about, if you're going to eat a lot of it every day, you have to make sure it's raw, like truly raw, because it could say raw, but then like they'll pasteurize it or heat it up slightly to like 100 degrees. And pasteurization occurs in honey at 92.8. So
Mm.
like this is something I learned a few months ago, was like when it gets above 92.8 outside, the bees in the hive will literally fan the honey to keep it below 92.8.
That's
So
crazy.
it's like, it's so beautiful, like just nature is so so perfect. So yeah, like you really just want like hive to jar, like,
Yeah.
so because if you have like slightly pasteurized honey and you're drinking like a lot of it throughout the day, like let's say like even like 3 tablespoons, it might, like anything pasteurized does to you, like your body's just like, what the hell is this? So it'll raise your blood sugar too much, and then a bunch of other bad things happen. I mean, like for me, I've experienced just a weird like crash not too long after, some like digestion
Mm-hmm.
problems. Like it's really not anything pasteurized, it's just so bad for you.
Yeah. No, that's actually really interesting you say that. The whole raw honey thing. There's a few of my buddies who are like really actually pretty good powerlifters, and they preach with raw honey throughout their workouts, and they'll actually carry like
Yes.
raw honey with them from from around the gym, and like take sips of it like in between their workouts. And apparently it's like a game changer in terms of like energy and like giving your body like the simple sugars that it needs to like perform at
Yes.
like optimal performance. Super cool. And I've actually been meaning to grab some for a while. I made a sandwich last night without raw honey. Without, I didn't have any honey on me, and I was just kind of sad because I've always had that in the back of my mind, and been trying to incorporate it more into my diet. But
Yeah. I love that though. I mean, athletes, if it's anyone that needs to be eating raw honey, it should be athletes, because like we already have such a stressed out environment day to day. And then now you have people that are like, well, I want to be above average and I'm going to go like work out like crazy, which is amazing for them, you know, that's how it should be.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not addressing all these other areas in life, like, you know, the environmental factors, the emotional stuff. Like every time you work out, your cortisol goes up, and if you don't have the minerals to support that, if you don't have, you know, the sugar to support that, like you're gonna just damage your body on a cellular level. I have such a hard time saying that. And so like raw honey is just amazing in mitigating that. So I actually I told some people recently, like, screw your pre-workout, like actually screw that poison and just get a big liter of water, put in like 3 tablespoons of raw honey and like half a lemon or a whole lemon, and now you have lemonade, and you drink that a little bit beforehand, and then you drink it throughout your workout. And I went from like being able only to work out intensely for like 45 minutes to like now I can easily do an hour 30. But that's just me, you know, like obviously I do different kinds of workouts, but yeah, it's like you're able to go harder for longer, and you get to have more steady workouts, and it's just amazing everything that raw honey is.
It's crazy. Like I'd say that most people understand calories relatively well. They understand macronutrients, like the whole balance, like having fats, having carbs, having protein in your diet relatively well. But what doesn't get talked about at all is the hormonal optimization and the hormonal changes that food has on our bodies, and how much that can like really, really, really affect our lives. Like, yeah, you can still be losing weight, but like your sense of well-being, your sense of happiness, you know, depression, like that'll go through the roof if like you don't have like everything right. And in doing it the right way, you know, you can really mitigate all these factors and actually like increase your sense of well-being, increase like your happiness, increase the level of, you know, just general well-being that you have, like while making yourself healthier. And it's almost just generally perceived as like if you're healthier you'll feel worse type thing, or like, if you lose weight, you know, it's gonna be awful. Like the whole diet culture, like we talked about earlier, you know, it's very much like given this idea that health is not fun, when in reality, like if you do it right, like the healthy meals, the healthy food that you have, you know, the workouts, that can like change your life. Like when I started like looking more into like the digestibility stuff and like finding foods that like work well with me, like I've never had like a day that I haven't been full, and I'm still losing weight, and I'm still performing incredibly well in the gym. And what's considered possible but very hard, like I'm recomping, like I'm losing fat and gaining muscle at the same time after having trained for almost 6 years, and in a sense that most people shouldn't be able to do this, but getting my body into like the correct environment to make it possible, it's working, and it's working so well once I got my hormones in check and started giving my body like the fuel that it needs and the recovery that it needs too.
I love that, and good for you. Wow. I mean, hormones are such a complicated topic because we have like so many glands in our body that kind of like bounce off of each other and work in synergy. Like I know that every time my like I have a more lower functioning thyroid on certain days, especially when I don't take my beef thyroid, which I haven't for like 3 weeks now, and it has not been the best time. But like every time that happens, I'll also have like more painful cycles because the two, like your thyroid and then like whatever reproductive organs you have, they work together.
Yeah.
And then there's just, you know, there's so much to factor in, like your pituitary gland and all these crazy glands. But yeah, it's like some people, if you think about, and this is like kind of what I wanted to get into last night when I was talking about polyester, is like how much our clothing and our environment affects our hormones. One thing, you know, just me being a girl and kind of like having a lot of girlfriends, they love their candles. They love their scented candles. They love lighting them when they write in their diaries. They love having them all over the house. And it's like these cheap candles are made of what? Soy, and then tons of fragrance, artificial fragrance. And it just throws your hormones off. And then another thing is like perfume and cologne. Every time I smell, like nowadays, every time I smell cologne on a dude, I get turned off. And it's like crazy because a lot of guys will only put it on to like attract the girls.
And it's having the exact, you know, opposite effect.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, he's a no.
That's funny.
Like, I mean, I'm not going to single him out. Obviously, you can educate anybody, but pheromones are so important. And cologne and perfume is masking your natural pheromones. So
Yeah.
the thing about like, you know, mating and courting or whatever is that what is really important in all of it is the pheromones. When you approach someone on a very deep biological level, your body should be able to like sniff out if they're a good match for you through the pheromones.
Yeah.
So like if just being around them, your body kind of like knows intuitively, oh, our offspring would be strong and healthy and whatever, or like we would get along well. Like I've met guys in the past where it's like I absolutely hated their pheromones, and I just like they wouldn't wear cologne. That was the thing. It's like I know this is a real thing, because like I'd be like, I like you, I like what you're about, but then we'd hang out and I'm like, there's something off. And now I'm thinking back and it's like I would remember like, oh, I just didn't like the way that they kind of low-key smelled.
There's a ton of studies. Sorry, I hate to interrupt, but I was reading this one study the other day that talks about like genetic compatibility for like your offspring, and like how the pheromones and hormones like all like interrelate, and like how literally thinking someone smells good contributes to like the possibility of them being like the correct genetic match for you. And that just blew my mind. Like how much our bodies actually know, even if our brains can't fully realize it yet. Like it's just insane. Like our bodies have like, especially the gut and like our brains and like our noses, like there's like 10 different like knowledge centers in our bodies that are constantly, you know, like telling us like these signs that we should act on. Like the whole gut, you know, the gut signal, the gut sense, like the gut feeling that people have.
Yeah.
How many times that actually is right about like really important things just blows my mind.
Yeah, that is such a good point. So with pheromones, there's also this thing of like, if the person does smell like kind of off, it also reflects their inner health. So like obviously how healthy they are. So I've met people where it's like I'm around them and they could be wearing deodorant and perfumes and I'm just like, there's still a scent. And it doesn't bother me too much. It's not like, oh, it's putrid, but it's like in my mind, because I know what I know about health, I'm just like, man, like they seem very burdened with their health. They're very stressed. They have a very high toxic load, and all these things go through my mind. And obviously my first instinct is to reach out and help, but sometimes I have to kind of like stop myself to do that. I would never bring that up to someone, but you know, I just love talking about this and like helping people. And yeah, it's just like the first thing that comes to mind is like, damn, like that person is not very healthy. Like, and if it's a guy, it's like, oh, I can't really pursue him. Like that's not, it would take a while to reverse that damage. For a lot of people, it takes a while to heal. So, you know, depending on where you are in life, if you're looking to court someone soon, or, you know, just be in the dating world and find that special someone, like you don't have years to wait. You know? Yeah,
exactly. It's crazy that you say that about like the smell and like the sense of well-being. And I'm not gonna throw this person underneath the bus because they are still very much in my life. But a girl that I was dating years back got anorexia from a stomach infection, and during this time, you know, health just went out the window. They lost a ton of weight. They weren't eating anything at all. And even though they had perfume on them, and I still found them incredibly attractive physically, I remember just like as I was around them, I would almost get sick. Like I would almost it might have been like a mix of the perfume, and even though they still use like the same perfume to this day, during that time specifically, I would just like my stomach would get upset from being around them. And I think it was probably like the sense, you know, maybe my body was able to like sense something like you were talking about, like it was signaling like that sort of like not like the anti-well-being that they're going through at that time. And like since they got better, it completely went away. And since I improved my health, you know, and not to be that guy, but when I was in the dating scene, when I was single for a while, I was constantly told by people like how much better I smelled. Like for the girls that were in my life that might have like started showing interest, like I was constantly told like, you smell incredible. When I had no deodorant on, when I shower obviously and shampoo, but I didn't have deodorant on at the time, you know, it wasn't in a state where like I did no cologne, no fragrances at all. But it was just one of those things where it was like, okay, something is actually working in my health and something is right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Good for you.
No, it's, yeah, I appreciate that. Another subject in the whole like hormone area, birth control. So many people that I know like personally are on it. is on it for her hormonal reasons that could probably be corrected if she fixed, like, you know, the what she ate. Off subject, and I feel bad for bringing that up, but people on their birth control, like probably dozens of millions of people are on it in America alone. Let's talk about that. You know, what are your thoughts on the matter?
I mean, my first thought every time I hear that a girl is on birth control, I'm just like, I'm praying for you, you know, because it is no joke. This is like, there are three main hormones that regulate a woman's cycle throughout the month. There's estrogen, progesterone, and I forgot the last one. But basically, when you're on birth control, depending on the type, like there's one that I was only on birth control for 2 months at the beginning of 2019, and it was the worst 2 months of my entire life. And that's like a very very short amount of time to be on birth control too, because like a lot of women will be like, yeah, I was on it for years and towards the end I was feeling like crap. No, I was on it for 2 months, and within 3 days of taking it is when the nausea started, and then it didn't stop for the entire duration. Like I would be nauseous all day long from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed, and it was like that for 2 months. And after that first month of having that, I went back to the doctor and I was like, this is bullshit. Like, what is this? And he was like, oh, well, you know, sometimes that happens to some girls. Let me put you on the progesterone only pill. And I was like, okay. So I went on that. I was still nauseous for the entire month. And at the end of it, I was like, the thing is, like, I went on it because I knew it was bad, but I didn't know how bad. And I just thought, you know, I kind of want relief from my cycles, from just menstruating, and I just wanted relief. And I was like, whatever, everyone else is on it, I'll go on it too. But yeah, towards that last bit of it, it was bad. So I got more into it. I did my research and I was like, okay, I got to get off this shit. And so I stopped taking it one day, just I think like towards the end of the cycle, and I didn't know if there's a way to like wean off of it at all. I just stopped taking it cold turkey. And 4 days later, I woke up at 7 a.m. I usually wake up at 10. Okay, so it's very unusual for me to wake up at 7 a.m., which is crazy, I know. But I woke up at 7 a.m. and I'm like clutching like my lower abdomen. I was like, what the heck? So I run to the bathroom. I'm just like standing around there, like literally, like the pain is indescribable. It feels like someone just actually stabbed me with a knife. And this is, by the way, 4 days off of birth control. So I was having withdrawal symptoms. So the pain got worse and worse. You know, I couldn't go to the bathroom. Everything was locked up down there. And I was like, I was, you know, crying, and I was starting to like kind of get really like faint. And so I'm like, okay, I need to go lay down. And I'm like clutching the walls, like so that I don't fall down. I'm clutching the walls, and then I get to my bedroom and I lean against the door frame, and I kind of like put my hands on my knees, kind of like, you know, when you're really tired. I'm just like breathing super, super heavily because the pain is just insane. It sounded like I was giving birth.
That's insane.
And next thing you know, I wake up, I'm on the floor, and one of my friends is looking over me. And so what happened is I was leaning against that door frame, and things just got worse and worse and worse. And I think, I know that I fainted and I flipped over a nightstand and I ended up on the floor.
That's crazy.
So the pain was so crazy that it knocked me out.
Oh my gosh.
And so when my friend found me, she said that my eyes were rolled into the back of my head, and my eyelids were like fluttering. Like it looked like I was kind of having a seizure. My eyes were wide open, and my whole body was kind of twitching, and it was just kind of like a robot malfunctioning. I was like she painted such a scary picture in my head. I'm like, oh my goodness. So yeah, and then like I couldn't get up without having like a splitting headache, so I just stayed there on the floor with a pillow under my head. And eventually laying down would make it worse. So I had to I had to continue sleeping the rest of that morning. When the pain subsided, I had to sleep sitting up. Like, if you know what I mean, like I was sitting
Yeah.
up against a wall, like my bed frame, my headboard. And because if I laid down, I would start twitching again. And I think that was also tied in with my original emergency room story that I told you, where I would have these kinds of symptoms. But regardless, the withdrawal symptoms were extreme abdominal pain, being delirious, and not to mention those 2 months, I was extremely moody. I mean, like bipolar level.
I've heard it's
Like I
crazy how
would,
much it changes like your mood and like the person that you are. Like people become like
yeah.
completely different people when they're on the pill.
Yeah, and I know that like it lowers libido for a lot of girls. Like it's funny because like a lot of girls will go on it because they don't want to get pregnant, and then they find themselves they don't even want to have sex while they're on it. So
Yeah.
it's like you kind of duped yourself, you know?
No, very, very much so. It's one of those things where if you look at like what the pill actually is, so I don't know if it's the progesterone component or if it's something else, but most birth controls contain Dianabol, a Dianabol analog. Dianabol is also known as Nandrolone or D-bol, and that's something that men take, or a lot of bodybuilders take as a performance-enhancing drug. It is an anabolic drug that's like used to gain muscle and increase their androgens. Anyways,
Wow.
to balance off that effect, they include that estradiol. So I think it's actually the D-bol that like does actually reduce like the chance of like pregnancy and like throws off the cycle. I'm not quite sure exactly, but if you look at it, you're combining androgens and then estrogen together to like mitigate the effects. You are changing your brain chemistry, and I don't know the other chemicals that are in there, but I looked at the back of like that one of the containers, and there was a bunch of other
Yeah.
stuff as well too. It's like you cannot tell me that taking this won't make you a completely different person. And the fact that
Yep.
16-year-old girls are hopping on birth control for 10 plus years, even more than that, decades, multiple decades, is absolutely crazy to me and seems so like if you look at what the medical community is like here for, it's like make us healthier, make us better, help with like our problems. If you look at what they're doing by giving us like such easy access to the pill, it's like yes, you're preventing pregnancy. That shouldn't be a problem because in a real world, people would be like properly courting people, not having sex with people they didn't care about. But you're also introducing all these other problems into their lives, all for that ability to not get pregnant. It just seems like such a immoral way of operating that I can't even like really wrap my head around it.
Yeah, doesn't it seem like there's an agenda? Because I
Yeah.
paid like what, maybe $1 or $2 a month for this drug. Like before going into it, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can go on birth control. Like that seems kind of expensive, right?
Yeah.
Nope, $2 a month. Sometimes it's free. And it's like, how are they even making money off of this drug anyways? And that's a whole conversation in itself. And I think a lot of us already know the answer with big pharma, but it's horrible stuff. And I know a lot of girls will come off of birth control, especially if they've been on it for years and years and years. And sometimes like their relationships, like they'll break up with their boyfriend or whatever because they're not attracted to him anymore,
Yeah.
because they met that guy while they were already on birth control. And now when they're not on it, well, basically it's like waking up from a deep sleep. It's like, whoa, where am I don't know if it's actually like that, but it's
No,
kind of like spiritually what I imagine it would be like.
I've heard it ruins marriages because they marry this person that they're on like birth control. They've been on birth control for so many years. Their brain chemistry
Yeah.
changes once they get off of it, and they realize like, hey, I actually don't like this person as much as I thought I did, or at all. I was actually I was
Can
at
you
work.
imagine?
I know it's scary. It's scary. I was actually looking at a paper the other day, and women on birth control prefer men with less feminine faces, and like at a very high level.
Yeah.
Like it's one of the things that's like this will probably happen to you. You'll prefer like a man who's softer, less masculine. And I'm reading through this paper, and part of me like wanted to text my girlfriend and be like, "Hey, you need to get off of it this right now."
Yeah. And most women, they think that there's no other alternative, and it's just not true. There's so many pages on Instagram where there are women who have devoted their lives to helping other girls get off of birth control, and slowly, and well, you can't do it slowly, but
Yeah.
get them off. And then like more so that you're on it, you start these protocols with your health, right? This way of eating, and then you get off of it, and you kind of have the vitamins and minerals to kind of like support that transition,
Yes. Yes.
make it easier, and then you continue doing the protocol. So that's, there's so many options out there. You can follow Jessica Ash Wellness. I think there's Kiara Marie Wellness. I think that's what it is. And then you can follow their similar counterparts that always comes up in the suggestions. But those two alone, those women have helped me so much.
I'm going to write those down,
my
actually.
hormones.
Yeah, that's
For
awesome.
sure, yeah. Jessica Ash and Kiara Marie.
Perfect.
And then there's also Wild Lions Wellness. I love her. All of that. So yeah, I mean, just women, like, and it's very digestible information, easy to read, just how it gives you a good understanding of like what is this vehicle I'm driving? You know, like most people are so disconnected. They don't even think about like what, obviously they don't think about what they're putting in their bodies, but they're just so not grounded. And I feel like this is a good time to bring up like vegans, for example. It's funny that a lot of vegans, when they go vegan, a lot of them will get into New Age and they'll stop caring about God, or they don't believe in God anymore.
Was it you who posted about that being a cult? Like the New Age thing being
yes.
like, yeah, okay,
yes,
yeah. That caught my mind, and I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I have a theory about why that happens. Like, when you're vegan, it's a community thing. It's like a virtue signaling thing. Like, look, you'll never hear a quiet vegan, right?
Never.
So those people are also in many other communities of thought. So like, you know, they're very big on Twitter usually and Instagram and whatever. And so they'll find their favorite influencers, and those influencers that make money off of all this will also preach New Age ideologies, you know, chakras, Reiki, crystals, and
you are a god.
It's like yeah, right. And it's like this very specific archetype that is just so easy to fall into when you're vegan, because vegans don't have like any critical thought, because like there's just so much going on, like being malnourished. It's like you can't waste energy on critical thought. It's all about emotions, because emotions take up much less energy, I think.
Yes.
So being vegan, I was highly emotional, and it was a mess. It ruined my life, quite literally ruined my life. You know, I almost failed my senior year, or was it my junior year or senior year of high school, because I was vegan during that time. I started when I was a sophomore, and I was pretty smart when I started. You know, like my whole life, like I had straight A's or A's and B's, and then my freshman year was great, and then sophomore year and the following years, my education suffered, and that's kind of part of the reason why I didn't go to college either, because, well, when I decided not to go to college, I was still vegan. But I also just felt like I was about to stop being vegan in the following months. So I was very close. But there was just something about, like, I feel like my education has suffered so much that if I go into college, like, I might actually, like, spiritually die. Like, it was like life or death for me. Like, I felt like it was going to be so bad, because the past few years in school and trying to study on this like subpar brain was horrible. I just couldn't do it, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, where was I going with that? Like, oh, so yeah, a lot of vegans, they'll stop caring about God, not because like, you know, not, like a lot of the reason it will be the influencers that like push them into the New Age, but physically and spiritually, there's something about like not eating meat that will like really unground you, because when you're vegan, you kind of have to rely on grocery stores and processed foods to survive.
Yeah.
You can't just rely on vegetables from your farmer's market or anything like that. Like that wouldn't work. So a lot of people, they have to go into the stores, and when you're just relying on grocery stores and you're not connected to nature at all, and you don't know where your food is coming from, and all your food is being imported from Asia and Mexico, like, of course you're gonna feel lost, you know? Like, this is why I was promoting just a few days ago eating seasonally, because it's just the best way to like kind of get in touch with the land around you. You know, there's pollen constantly coming out of pollen and other things coming out of plants all the time. And this is why I say to people, like, make sure your raw honey is local, because sometimes if you're eating honey from like Hawaii, for example, which my friend recently sent me honey from Hawaii, sometimes you might have a bad reaction or a little bit of like a not like an allergic reaction, but you might feel a little bit off.
Mm.
Or sometimes some people will get a little bit like sick for a few hours because you're not used to the pollen at
Yep.
all
Yep.
that's in Hawaii. You need the pollen from your area to, because that's also what's in the honey. It's not the pollen, but like the properties of that. So um yeah, so eating food from around the world, like you're gonna not be grounded at all with like where you are on this earth, and kind of like our connection with nature, and like, you know, just kind of like our communities also is kind of a direct connection to God, because God is the one that kind of brought all this together. And if you're eating from a grocery store and you're just living this very artificial life, sometimes you start to question, like, what is God? Like, why
Yeah.
would he, if he was real, why would I be living like this, you know?
Hmm.
And so it's like you just start to get into this very dystopian mindset, and like you start to question the fundamentals and the basics, and it's like it's downhill from there.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's crazy. I love that so much, and I'm noticing so many like correlations between like what you just talked about, even that I fully like, I didn't understand, and like my life, like all these like crazy similarities that like popping up with like the concepts that you're talking about, and then I think the viewers will start noticing too is really awesome. Where can they
Yeah.
find you on social media if they want to follow you and hear more about this?
Yeah, so right now it's Earth to Victoria, which is a very funny name because I created it after I stopped being vegan, because when I was vegan, I was very spacey. And
I
so
love
it would
that.
always kind of be like, you know, Earth to Victoria, like, are you there? You know, I would never be very good at engaging in conversations. I would space out, and something my friends would say to me in a similar context. So it was kind of like a, it was just a, you know, marker of like this new path that I
Yeah.
embarked on.
That's funny. You know, I feel like everyone should be following you, and like, if they are following you, they're going to be gaining so much important like information. So anyone who's watching this, who's gotten to this point, please go follow her. You know, I've learned a lot from following her page, and it's made me challenge, you know, a lot of my ideas that I've had about society as well too. And, you know, also having her on today, like I don't bring just anyone on. Like the fact that I invited you, you know, I knew that you had something to like bring to like the world, and like this podcast surpassed, you know, all the expectations I had. So thank you so much for talking, and I'm definitely sure that I'll be having you on in the future to talk more about this. You know, unfortunately, people's attention spans don't go past an hour or even like 20 minutes usually, but I'm going to be clipping the hell out of this podcast, you know, and hopefully we will be changing people's lives, and you will continue doing that at a very high level.